Hello everyone, hopefully everyone is doing well today. So welcome to our second lesson of the year for Algebra 1. So today we will be learning how to graph functions. So the other day we learned a little bit about function notation. Today we will delve into graphing functions. Okay, before we begin, I will give you the opportunity to write down the title, which is graphing functions, and then write down today's learning target 1B, which is that you will be able to graph and describe a function by making a table of values. Okay, again, very important to get used to writing the learning target for you specifically, because once we start doing future lessons, this will be a great place to go back to once you start studying for your quiz that you will have for learning target 1B, which will be coming in about a week or so. Okay, so I'll give you a moment to write this down and then we'll proceed from there. Okay, so before we learn about this, we're going to do a little bit of review. So I'll give you one quick moment to draw your graph, to write down these questions, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pause the video and then we'll continue from there. Okay, alright, so first we're going to review how to plot each point. So just a reminder, remember for you to plot each point, we're going to do one thing. So make sure you pull out your red pen and let's label the coordinate for each the value for each coordinate. So remember, so let's look at A. So for 3, you know that this is your x value. Okay, your 2 is your y value. So now let's go from there. So first, let's look for our x. So we gotta find 3. Where's 3? It can't be right here because it's negative, but then we have to go over here. And then once you count it, we start here, you go 1, 2, 3. So there's your 3 right there. Now, your y value, I'm gonna just put my finger right there. Your y value is 2. So then we're going to count up our y's. So then you're going to remember, since it's positive 2, you have to go up. So you go 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2. So therefore this point right here is, that point right there is your A, which is 3, 2. Okay? So very straightforward, something you've already done. Let's go to the next one. Again, this point is 1, -5. To help yourself, label your points. So this right here is your x, and this is your y. So now let's go to our x. Our x is 1. So okay, take a look at it. So your x-axis is right here. Your 1 can't be right here because it's negative, so it has to be over here. So 0, 1. And then your y, it is a negative. So instead of going up, you gotta go down 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that right there, my fellow students, is point B, which is 1, -5. Okay. Point C, this one is -3, -4 again. So help yourself, you know your -3 is an x and your -4 is a y. And again, this is very important because that's the order that we follow. The first one is an x, the second one's a y, always. Always and forever and ever. Okay? So now let's go from there. -3, we know that it can't be in the positive, so you have to go to the negative. So you have to go 3 to the left. So 1, 2, 3. Okay? Your y is a -4, so now you have to go down 4 because it's negative. Okay, so then we have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and so your point right there is -3, -4. Okay, another thing you could do for yourself too is, like, since you're, like, for example, for this one, for 3, since you were -3, since you have to go to the left, I would draw an arrow to the left, and then for our y, since it was -4, draw an arrow down. Okay, something that can help you to do these problems. Okay, now the last one. So 0, 3. Now 0, 3, if you take a look at it, your x, you have to find where your 0 is. You can't go positive, you can't go negative, so your 0 must be right here dead center. Okay, your y, it's positive, so since positive 3, you have to go up 3. So 1, 2, 3. So 0, 3 is right there. Therefore, we could label it. So 0, 3. Okay. I'll label this a little bit more just to make it seem a little more clear. Okay. I will go ahead and pause this real quick for you to draw this down, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Now, go ahead and write down this example. So example number 1. Remember, you're going to have to graph the function y equals to 2x minus 1. Plot this right here, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so when they ask you to graph a function, you want to make sure that you make a table of values. So I'm going to put right here, make a table of values. Okay, so you're going to make yourself a table of values. Now, here, I'm going to make a little table for myself. Okay, so I'm going to make my x and y table, and I'm going to test out 3 points. So you could test out any points. The beauty about this is for any x, you could put any points you want. You could put 0, you could put 1, you could put 10, you could put 1,000 even if you wanted to, but don't make it hard on yourself. Be easy on yourself. So I'm going to make it as simple as possible. I'm going to put -1, 0, and 1. Okay? Then from there, I'm going to test these 3 points. So first, I'm going to put x equals to 1. Okay, first, remember, we have to evaluate the function, and the reason we're doing that is because we want to find points to plot onto here, so then we're able to graph. Okay, so first, write your equation. So I'm going to write y equals to 2 times x, but instead of an x, I'm going to put parentheses, and then put the -1. Okay, again, since we are using this function, I'm going to plug in my x, and the x that we have right here is 1. Okay, so I'll use my red pen, and we'll go from there. Now we can evaluate it. 2 times 1 shall give you 2. -1, so you bring the -1 to the bottom, and then from there, 2 minus 1 will give you 1. Okay, and since that was for our x equals to 1, that means that this value right here will go over here to our 1. Okay, so then we'll put 1, and our y value is 1. Okay, now let's test out the next point. I'm going to put x equals to 0. Okay, so I'm going to test out this point right here. Again, write down the same function. Put y equals to 2 times, but instead of an x, put a 0, and then -1. Again, I put the parentheses right there, and then the x I'm going to put is my 0, and we'll go from there. 2 times 0 will give you 0. 2 times 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0, you guys. If you guys don't know that, you remember that. Anything times 0 will give you 0. And then -1 will give you 0 minus 1 shall give you -1. Okay? And then this -1, remember it pertains to our x equals to 0, so make sure that it goes there. And therefore, we have 0, comma, -1. Okay? And last but not least, we're going to test out this value right here. X equals to -1. Okay? It doesn't matter what value you test out the points. I just did it a certain way just to do it. Okay? So I could have started with -1 and then gone from there. So it doesn't matter. As long as you test out the points, you're fine. But anyways, I digress. Let's go. Y equals to 2 times, again, parentheses, -1. For my x, since I'm replacing my x with -1, I shall put -1 right there. 2 times -1 shall give you, careful, negative times positive gives you negative, so you have a -2 minus 1. Remember, -2 minus 1 shall give you -3. So you get a -3, and then you bring this up here, and therefore your value is x is -1 and your y is -3. Okay, so there you go. You have this point, and then that point right there. Now we can graph it. So first, look at -1, comma, -3. So again, look at your x. Your x is -1, so we start here. And then your y is -3. So our point is right here. So -1, comma, -3. Okay, and I'll label that for us. So -1, comma, -3. Your second point is 0, comma, 1. So therefore, you're going to put 0, comma, -1. So you're going to put 0, comma, -1. So your point is right there. Okay? Again, just easy plotting. So 0, comma, -1. And last but not least, your next point is 1, 1. So we have to go right 1 and then up 1. So therefore we have 1, 1. Okay? And so now you must use, we're going to connect these points right here. We're going to connect those points right there. So now I'm gonna get, you can use a ruler, but I'm using my ID. I'm gonna get those points, and then I'm gonna use my blue pen and connect these points right here. And therefore, there's your graph. Once you've connected all the lines, remember, use a ruler to make it as clean as possible. That ends up being your graph. Okay? I'll give you a little moment to copy this down, and then we'll move on to the next problem. Okay, next problem. So flip the page and write down example number 2. So let's just say a 2 right there. Write down example number 2. So graph the function y equals to x plus 1. Remember, graph your little graph right there, and then we'll continue. Okay, same thing. Remember, we must make a table of values. So therefore, I'm going to make an x and a y table, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Remember, you could test anything. I could put 2, I could put 3, whatever. But to make it easy myself, I'm going to choose these 3 points. I'm going to put -1, 0, and 1. Okay? Now let's go from there. So first, I'm going to test out x equals to -1. Remember, you write down your function, you put y equals to. But since this is your x, and we're not going to use x, we're going to put parentheses plus 1. Okay? So now I'm going to plug in my -1 for my x. Okay, so parentheses -1, you could drop that, and you should get -1 plus 1, and therefore you shall get 0, because that right there is the opposite. So therefore, since your x equals -1 gave you 0, we're going to put our 0 right there. Okay? Now, let's test out x equals to 0. Again, I'm going to write down my function, so y equals to parentheses plus 1. Right here, just to remember, your parentheses, we're plugging in a 0 for x, I'll put 0 right there. And then we have y equals to 0 plus 1, which will give you 1. Okay? So since your 0 gave you a 1, then that means for right here, we're going to plug in 1. And last but not least, x equals to 1. Again, write down your function again, so we put y equals to parentheses plus 1. Again, you're plugging in your 1 for your x right here, so therefore we put 1. And you already know 1 plus 1 is, that equals to 2. There you go. So you get 2, and therefore, right here, your y value ends up being 2. Okay? Now, you can make it easy for yourself. You could write these as points right here if you want to. But just know that, just circle your points. So this point, that point, and then that point. That point right here will give you -1, 0. This point right here will give you 0, 1. And then this point will give you 1, 2. Okay? But let's continue from there. Now let's go ahead and plot them. Again, let's plot -1, 0. So -1, remember it's in your x right here. And then 0, that means it's not going up or down. So therefore that's your point right there. So draw yourself a big dot right there. And now you get, again, I'll label it for you. I'll put -1, 0. Next point, 0, 1. So your x starts at 0, so you don't move anywhere. And then 1, another point right there. And it's going to be 0, 0, 1. Okay, this point right here for that. And then your last point, 1, 2. So you go up 1 and then right 2. So up 1 and right 2. Okay, so 1, 2. And then from there, we can now connect the points. Connect the points using your ID. And then we go from there. for your ruler. Okay, and that's it. Alright, give you a couple moments to write this down, then we'll go to our last example. Alright, last example. Draw this down right here, example 4. So graph the function y equals to x minus 2, and we'll continue from there. Okay, now again we have to find our table. So again, I'm gonna just make it easy myself. I'm gonna start off and test out these. I'm gonna put -1, 0, and then 1. Okay, -1, 0, and 1. Again, I'm gonna test out the values. So first, I'm gonna do my work right here. I put x equals to -1, and I put y equals to parentheses minus 2. Remember, for parentheses, you're plugging in a -1. So you put -1 minus 2. That'll give you -1 minus 2, which again, once you do your integers, you will get -3. Okay? So that goes over here. So now you get -1 comma -3. Now, plug in your next value, x equals to 0. So I'm going to put y equals to parentheses minus 2. And again, for my x, I'm not using an x, I'm using the 0. So I plug in a 0 right there. So now we get 0 minus 2. And 0 minus 2 shall give you -2. Okay, and you go from there. So -2. And then the last value, we gotta plug in x equals to 1. Okay, so we put y equals to parentheses minus 2. So we gotta plug in a 1. And then that gives you 1 minus 2, which shall give you -1. Okay, and then that goes right there, and then you put -1. And then from there, we have our 3 points. And now we can plot them. Okay, so circle your points just to make it easy for yourself. So the first one I'm going to look at is -1 comma -3. So again, this is your x and this is your y. So I'm going to put -1. Remember, you're going to the left, -1, and then you go down 3 since you're going -3. So 1, 2, and then 3. So -1 comma -3. That's your first point. Okay, now plot this again. Second point, 0 comma -2. For your x, you don't move anywhere left or right. So we start at 0 and then comma -2. So you have to go down 2. So 1, 2. So 0 comma -2. And then last but not least, our last point, 1, -1. So remember, your x, your 1 is positive, so you go right 1, and then you go down 1. And then that point right there again is 1 comma -1. And there you go. You have those 3 points. Connect them. And then now you have a fresh line. Okay, and there you go. Could I test out more points if I wanted to? Absolutely. But just make it simple for yourself. 3 points is what I want to see, and once you graph those 3 points, that's all you need. Okay? Alright, so now that concludes the lesson for today. Now you will do a homework assignment on this. So without further ado, you will separate into your breakout rooms and then we'll continue from there. That being said, have a great day, and I will see you in a little bit.